All right, we are back on the channel. It is talkSPORT's Endzone, our dedicated NFL YouTube channel. We are still in the midst of Wildcard Weekend, and don't worry, we'll have an edition of the Rundown coming for you on Tuesday, breaking down all the action from there, some brilliant interviews. So as always, please do go and like and subscribe. But Will Gavin, Brian T. Smith, we have got a huge piece of breaking news to talk about, and that is that Mike McCarthy is no longer the head coach of the Dallas. Technically, Mike McCarthy's no longer been the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys for a week now, but thanks to Jerry Jones doing things in the unique way that Jerry Jones likes to do things, they had this 1 week negotiating period, this exclusive negotiating period that he had Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday last week. The two of them sat down. They talked football. They initially discussed contract points with him and his agent, Don Yee. And I think the world begun to accept that it looked like Mike McCarthy might be sticking around in Arlington, Texas. Instead, he is out the door. Jerry Jones, a week behind everyone else, is now looking for a new head coach. Mike McCarthy, an experienced head coach, a Super Bowl winning head coach, no matter what you think about him, his scheme, his ability to coach now, is suddenly available during a busy coaching cycle. So loads for us to get into. I've got a lot of thoughts on this, Brian, but as the man who I know as a New Orleans born but former Texas man, you have a quite unique perspective on this, considering the Saints could be a landing spot for him. What were your initial reaction when you saw this news that Mike McCarthy not returning to Dallas?
Yeah, well, I need boxing gloves on right now. I'm ready. I'm ready to go, man. I've been waiting to record this as everything. I was walking the dog, checked my phone. I'm not making this up. My wife and I have literally been talking about this last couple of days. I think she's one of the happiest people in the world, by the way, because the Dallas Cowboys, and we're getting into how they handle everything, but the Dallas Cowboys finally did the right thing and moved on from Mike McCarthy. I've been saying on the Rundown at talksport.com, I've been saying this all year, Will. Mike McCarthy was gone. He was a dead man walking. The fact that it took Jerry Jones this long to figure it out is absolutely bonkers, but they did it. And the biggest thing for me, Will, is where do they go from here? And how do they figure out when you have talent? You have Dak Prescott, you have Micah Parsons, you have CeeDee Lamb, you have some huge contracts, but a good coach can come in there and he can win 10 games next year. He can win 11 games next year. You can be a playoff team next year, but who's going to bring discipline to the Dallas Cowboys? And most importantly, and this is the question, who can handle, who can deal with, who can get the best out of Jerry Jones, who is clearly at the end of his time running the Dallas Cowboys? Nobody would have handled it this way except for Jerry Jones. Even if you're not going to fire Mike McCarthy after last season's playoff disaster, which that's what I would have done. I would have fired Mike McCarthy after they lost to the Packers at home and had the embarrassment. Mike McCarthy was highly fireable earlier this season. This whole idea, Will, that the Cowboys started putting out there, Jerry Jones started putting out there, that the Cowboys, if they just were healthy, if they just had some good luck, if Mike McCarthy could just run it back one more time and I'll be fine, was absolutely asinine, Will. It wasn't factual. The Dallas Cowboys were getting blown out at home, torched at home. Mike McCarthy should have been gone, and then they could have had their pick. But you've already had some good coaches hired. Bill Belichick, maybe we'll get into him in a second. He's at North Carolina, so now you got to give $10 million likely to get him out of North Carolina. The Dallas Cowboys are now behind everybody else, but that makes me think that Jerry Jones already knows who he wants. I wonder what Deion Sanders is doing right now.
I was going to say, I feel like you've got a Deion Sanders bomb to drop. And look, this whole season has been an utter shambles from a Cowboys perspective. 7-10 actually sugarcoats what could have been a much worse year record-wise for them. Jones made this proclamation last offseason. We are all in. We're sticking with Mike McCarthy. And yet Tyron Smith leaves. Tony Pollard leaves. Tyler Biadasz leaves. Dorrance Armstrong leaves. Their big free agent signing of the offseason is Ezekiel Elliott.
Ezekiel Elliott, and then you have the guts to cut him when he quit on the team. And then they're like, well, you've done so much for us. Go to the Chargers, and at least you get to play in a playoff game. The whole thing, they are the most poorly run organization in the NFL, and they're the richest team in the world. Those two things are polar opposites. How does this team get fixed, Will? And who can fix all this?
And look, this may be too late to have this conversation anyway, but they are the richest team in the world, right?
Yeah.
With one of the richest owners in the world. And yes, he had this weird negotiating period, but the fact of the matter is that his concern was, well, if we want to keep Mike McCarthy, I don't want to lose him to somebody else. Well, just sign him to a year extension last year. So you've got him locked down, and then sack him off, eat the $8-10 million, whatever he's earning a year and whatever his staff is earning, eat that and go into this hiring process at the right time, even ahead of time. You had three teams do it in the middle of the season, and they were ahead of their skis.
Why didn't they do it like week 15 or week 16? Like you weren't going to give him a multi-year extension. We've already had the reports, the national reports, that it came down to the length of contract. Obviously, they gave him something, so you knew you weren't committed to him. How come they have to be so slow and so dumb and do this in basically week 19 of the NFL season? Nobody else would have done it this way. But now, who are they going to hire? Is it going to be Bill Belichick? Is Bill Belichick going to have to? You know this story, right? Bill Belichick was the HC of the NYJ. He was the head coach of the New York Jets for like 24 hours, and then wrote on a piece of paper, "I'm no longer a napkin." Wrote, is he going to do that to Michael Jordan and the NIL North Carolina? Are you going to get Deion Sanders and pry him away from Colorado, even though he's not going to be able to coach both of his sons next year? Man, only the Cowboys would do it this way. But on the flip side for me is like Mike McCarthy had to be gone. At least they finally recognized that.
And listen, it was even things like, the CeeDee Lamb contract dragging out all of last summer. Micah Parsons not tying him up before now, which means that's going to now drag out for way too much of this offseason. And maybe they'll have learned a lesson from last year. But you feel like that's probably not the case. And like you said, Bill Belichick, even what you've done by doing it now is you've missed out on potential. Belichick, I always felt like him and Jones wasn't a good fit. But
I agree.
You talked about a culture guy. You talked about someone who can come in and install that. Mike Vrabel, now in New England, could have been perfect for this job. Didn't even get the chance to have the conversation with him. And all of those coordinators, all of those hot hands that people like right now, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, people who don't work for the Lions, they are all now back into their process. They are now getting ready for a game week next weekend and suddenly aren't going to want to do another even more interviews and more prep and I think all of that combined with the fact that I just don't see this as an attractive job right now. And it's not attractive because, yes, you have the quarterback, you have the pass rusher, you have decent corners, you have the bones of a squad. But I think I saw somebody have a really interesting take on this, which is what makes a head coaching position attractive. And I think your reason one and your reason two for most of these jobs is, do I have a quarterback or do I have an option to get a quarterback, i.e. a high draft pick or whatever that might be? And will I have control? Will I have the ability to build this franchise up? It's why the Titans job is not exciting to me, but it's why this Cowboys job is a horrendous option while Jerry Jones is still there, unwilling to wrangle control away. And I don't know, it feels like one of those where, well, look at all those guys that the Jets are interviewing via the 33rd team. They could well end up with a Rex Ryan actually, I think
I was just about to say, knowing the Cowboys, they'll get Rex Ryan. They'll just do something that you're just like, oh my God.
And so I think when you take away that element of control, you are not going to be able to attract one of the exciting young head coach prospects. And look, we're going to talk about Vrabel on the show tomorrow. And I think that as much as I like him as an appointment, I think he's got a huge job on his hands from a staffing perspective. And maybe if you can bring in a more experienced person who appreciates the prestige of the job, and they have guys they can bring in, they have guys they can pluck from Shanahan and McVay trees that they think that they can bring through, then great. There's something there maybe. But this job is so unattractive to me. They've missed so much of the cycle already. Those guys, even if they get interviews with them, might have already decided they like a job elsewhere. And look, like Aaron Glenn, as an example, already turned down an interview at the Patriots thinking he wouldn't get that job. It's a complete and utter mess from that perspective. And really, when it comes to Mike McCarthy himself, you've approached it very much from what I think is the right view from after that playoff loss last year. I think arguably the year before when they didn't even make the playoffs, even the year before that when they lost to the 49ers in embarrassing fashion. But right now we're seeing a bit of an offensive revolution in the NFL. It started over the last 4 or 5 years with the Shanahans, the McVays, the McDaniels, all of those guys. But now led by the likes of Liam Cohen, Ben Johnson, the level of aggression teams are bringing in now, and the thing that really stands out to me is the way that they are making things easy for their quarterbacks. They are giving their quarterbacks gimme wins on plays. And Mike McCarthy's scheme and the way he does it for Dak Prescott requires an incredibly smart quarterback, and it requires everything to be read at the line of scrimmage. And it's very old school. It's very 90s, very early noughties. And so you are going to need somebody from a Cowboys perspective to come in and just revolutionize all of that. And then from a Mike McCarthy perspective, like they're talking about him joining Mickey Loomis, maybe at New Orleans. I mean, that feels like a staff which would have worked 20 years ago, but I'm not having it now. I don't know. I'm not touching McCarthy with a 10-foot barge. I'm not touching McCarthy with a 10-foot barge pole right now.
I'm sure all the Saints fans, who are some of the best fans in the world, will enjoy going 6-11 with Mike McCarthy next year, right? That's what Saints fans want. No, and here's the thing for me, and I love a lot of I love everything you just said. Let's look at what Jerry Jones has done the last two hires. So Jason Garrett, he held on, and I mentioned this on the rundown earlier this year. But Jerry Jones has told us everything about Jerry Jones with his last two hires. He held on to Jason Garrett way, way too long. When every NFL fan, every blogger, every tweeter, everyone listens to the radio, everybody who knows the NFL knew that Jason Garrett was not good enough, Will. They had the season, Dak's first year, Ezekiel's first year. That was the hope. They fell short in the playoffs, had some bad luck. They were never, ever good enough under Jason Garrett. You have Mike McCarthy. I never would have hired Mike McCarthy in the first place. It went bad in Green Bay. It went bad with Aaron Rodgers. He sat out a year. He sort of fibbed that he had spent the whole offseason, the whole year studying the league. He really hadn't. He wasn't a cutting-edge coach. He wasn't great at discipline. They had really bad chemistry, discipline, locker room issues the last 2 years. So you have to have an answer for that. But all Jerry Jones has done for like the last 20 years, Will, is bring in safe, conservative, average, down the middle guys, kind of old school. They're not cutting edge, all those things you just mentioned. So is he almost 90 years old, is he going to flip everything and be like, I want to go young, I want cutting edge? Because everything about that, you're going to butt heads with Jerry Jones. You know, you're going to clash. You're going to have friction. You're going to want power. You're going to want to have your say. You're going to say, hey, Jerry, we've got some talent, but I can't have Micah Parsons on it, doing his streaming all the time and responding to everything out there because it screws us up when we're trying to play a game. They need someone with drive and passion and energy and ideas. And that is the opposite of Jerry Jones running the Cowboys the last 5 to 10 years.
And look, the question mark over like the Deion Sanders situation, right? Links with the Raiders over this past weekend, although via The Athletic, the Raiders have now massively denied that move was ever on the cards and they were ever interested, which suggests that that's come from Deion's camp, which wouldn't be stunning, which suggests that it's actually pushing for a bigger payday at Colorado, which wouldn't be stunning. A man who said previously he's too old-fashioned to deal with modern pro athletes and doesn't like, he prefers the college game, even though NIL has made that so much more like the pro game. Right. It's ridiculous. But he has essentially suggested he wouldn't leave college for the NFL. Is there enough lure with the Cowboys? There's a little bit of me that wants to see it because I think it's going to be either glorious or horrendous. It's going to be that kind of can't look away from a car crash situation potentially. And so it will be the story of the season. It will be the story of the year. It will be such a dominant thing to talk about. I love it and I hate it in equal measure, but it feels so very Jerry Jones.
That's where I'm at. So number one, if I'm Jerry Jones, I'm calling Bill Belichick right now. I'm not talking to Lombardi. I'm not talking to the people who work for him. I'm not talking to Matt Patricia, with a pencil in his, like, I'm calling Bill Belichick personally. Maybe you have to go through his girlfriend. I know it's complicated now, but I'm calling Bill Belichick right now and saying, what does it, I want you, and I'm going to give you the keys, and we're going to do a little dance, and I'm still going to have all the power, but I'm giving you the Dallas Cowboys. I want to know how you would fix it. You have that conversation and you try it. I think if that doesn't work, I wouldn't do it. But I will not be surprised at all if Jerry Jones goes for Deion Sanders because Jerry Jones wants flash, and you bring the '90s Cowboys back. He's not getting Jimmy Johnson off the Fox set. Barry Switzer Barry Switzer's not walking through that door, Will. But Deion Sanders, it's kind of been building to this the last couple years, and I don't care what Deion says. Deion is Deion primetime Sanders. I grew up, watching him and reading everything about him. Deion Sanders is going to say whatever he needs to say to get the best situation for Deion Sanders. He's just playing the game like players play it, and Deion Sanders is the ultimate player. That's what I do if I'm Jerry Jones. Number one, it's Bill Belichick. Number two, if Bill says no, I want to stay at North Carolina, which would be a dumb decision, I go for Deion Sanders.
If it's Deion, I really
the world will explode. Like Twitter,
my head
the world will explode
at the thought of it. And like maybe they prove us wrong, and maybe it turns into a Dan Campbell situation, and it's a players' revolution, and he brings in a bunch of those coaches from college who have
which
come
would be
in
cool.
and given,
yeah,
and that all sounds fantastic. And maybe they make the Cowboys relevant again. And in a way, I think the world might be ready for that. But equally, the world will enjoy it just as much if it's
it burned to the ground. And let me just say this really quick. This is the last run for these Cowboys, right? And Jerry has to also factor that in. Dak Prescott is getting old. He's injury prone. Micah Parsons, you have a contract situation. You don't really have a number one true running back right now. Your line is getting older. Your defense has issues. That is a lot to work, because the Cowboys are always set up, well, Super Bowl or bust. So you have to get the right head coach. You have to get somebody who can get the best out of Micah Parsons and get him off his Twitch streaming or whatever the heck he does. That is a lot to ask of a head coach, and there's only a few people in the world that could do that. And then they have to deal with Jerry Jones. It's almost like the impossible job, right? It's the impossible job in the United States of America to win a Super Bowl with the Dallas Cowboys, and Jerry Jones is the owner, president, general manager, and also pours the beer for you and charges you $20. Not a pint, a cup.
A 16-ounce cup.
Yeah, a 16-ounce cup.
Oh, God. Brilliant stuff. Brian, thank you for jumping on quickly to do this. Those were our initial reactions, but we will have a rundown show out tomorrow where we'll break it down in a bit more depth. As I say, I want to go into that Vrabel hire as well. Yeah. We'll talk about the results from Wildcard Weekend. What a win for the Washington Commanders in particular. Jaden Daniels, sensational. Can they keep that roll going? Could the Texans upset the Chiefs? We'll be joined by How About Those Chiefs? Cole. He'll be joining us on the show. So loads of great stuff coming up, and lots more exclusive player interviews. Last week, 8 interviews from the wildcard round, exclusive player interviews. This week, we're going to continue that train rolling. So get on there. Make sure you subscribe. Give this video a like. Comment below. Let us know your thoughts on the Jerry Jones situation. Thank you so much for watching. This has been NFL Endzone.